So tomorrow is the budget, or at least the budget statement for March. There's a lot of stuff that was rumored to be in that budget statement, which has made it this thing to talk about, and we have covered it here on the channel. One of the main things that I wanted to focus on, and we have spoken about here, is the potential reduction to the cash ISA limit from £20,000 to £4,000. From what we understand, that is not going to be announced tomorrow, but we are not out of the woods. So the way this is being framed is quite interesting, because they're using the word balance, i.e. they want people who pay into an ISA to have a balance between how much they put into cash ISAs and how much they put into stocks and shares ISAs, which when you look at it from a very high level would absolutely make sense. And it's something that I truly believe would actually help a lot of people if they invested more in stocks and shares ISAs. However, there are fundamental problems which I've spoken about on previous videos, which I'm going to just touch on very briefly here. And the video last week is a prime example of this first point, being that people are not comfortable with how stocks and shares ISAs work. Not only are they not comfortable with it, they don't really want to take the investment risk, because fundamentally beyond that, people don't understand how investing and investment risk works. I mean, quite literally, some of the comments were, I guess for a novice, understandable, but for someone who's been in the industry like myself for a long, long time, laughable that we still don't have a grasp of the basic concept of investing. It's absolutely crazy to me. The second thing that I think is worthwhile just bearing in mind in terms of why people don't necessarily want to use or would not use a stocks and shares ISA is because cash ISAs are just so much more easy to interact with, to gain access to, and it's what we become accustomed to as a nation, just saving money in a high yield savings account, despite the fact that inflation will eat away at your returns. And ultimately, investments over the long term have always returned better than any savings account you could think of. Fundamentally, I can get on board with this idea that if they're able to succeed in getting more people to invest in the stocks and shares ISA by reducing the cash ISA, that it would be a fundamental win. It would be a big win, actually, because it means that you can invest your money into the global markets. It will grow free of income tax, dividends tax, capital gains tax. All the while, it's going to be compounding. You're not going to give that money away to the taxman either. And fundamentally, that's a way to accelerate how quickly your money can grow. But there are a couple of fundamental questions. One of the things that they've said is that by reducing the cash ISA limit, that it would be a way to benefit the UK economy. And I just don't see that being the case. And I don't see that being the case because ultimately it would mean that they would have to mandate how people are investing. And if you look at the routes and how people invest currently, you cannot ignore the United States. And you cannot ignore the fact that the UK over the past 5-6 years has just been extremely unproductive. The economy hasn't been going that well, and it hasn't been as attractive an investment as maybe it was in the years gone by. And so what they would have to do is introduce something like the Brit ISA, which was supposedly coming through but has been scrapped. And with the Brit ISA, the idea was that they would give you an additional allowance on top of your £20,000 allowance if you invested in UK companies. They would have to revisit that kind of idea. But here's the problem. We know that the UK has not necessarily been the best place to invest over the past few years. So how do you encourage people or convince people that the UK is the right place to invest when other markets like the US are massively outperforming because they have a load of tech giants and they're leading the charge with AI? How do you convince people this is going to be a good idea? So there are lots of questions that need to be asked. There is also another thing. The idea of taxing your ISAs is not a new one. It's been around for some time now. And indeed, if you go back over my videos over the past couple of years, you will see that we've spoken about this before a number of times. The unfortunate reality is this. There is a lot of money in ISAs right now that the government cannot touch for tax. And unfortunately, as a country, as a nation, the economy isn't where it needs to be. It isn't where it should be. We have our infrastructure, our public services at breaking point. And so the Chancellor has to increase tax receipts. And the best way to do that is to close the loopholes that allow people, loopholes is not the right word, close the regulation, the laws that allow people to save and invest completely tax-free. And I believe this is what's happening. These are consultations, and the fact that we're seeing more of it in the news right now is simply framing and foreshadowing for what is to come. Yes, it's not going to be announced tomorrow, but guess what? It's now in the public's thought. It's now in the public's domain as something that might happen in autumn. So here are my thoughts on this. I think that fundamentally, you have to do what you know you should be doing. And that's not rocket science. It's using, at the very, very least, your cash ISA allowance. And it's most definitely using as much as you possibly can of your stocks and shares ISA. Because the truth is, they may, in the autumn, decide that they reduce the cash ISA limit down to £4,000. Even worse, they might decide to reduce the overall ISA limits. We don't know. We've got to wait to find out. God forbid they simply just scrap ISAs, which I don't think that they would have the gumption to do, but worse things have happened, right? But there is a huge part of this that comes down to your own personal accountability. It is way too easy to point the finger at governments and people and they've not given us this or they're doing that, and it's too easy. What are you going to do? Where's your own personal sense of accountability? I mean, honestly, the video from Tuesday, I cannot tell you how frustrating it was reading the comment section. Just people being misguided about how investments work. And I have a theory, looking at the demographic of people who watched that video, I do not believe that it's young people who this channel is made for. The 24s, the 45s, maybe up to 50. I feel like those comments, that anti-investing, that misunderstanding of how investing works has to be older people, 55, 60 years old, which, by the way, you're in a completely different phase of life. So yes, the choices that you make are going to be different depending on those factors. But for young people, boy, if you are not using your stocks and shares ISAs, boy, you are missing a trick. And we are in some serious, serious trouble if I'm wrong. And the majority of those comments came from people in my target audience, 25 to 45 going up to 50. If that is true, we're in some real trouble as a nation, because wow. Anyway, I'm going to be covering the budget tomorrow, so feel free to join in the live stream and we'll find out together what they announce or what they do not announce or what they decide they're going to sneak in. But it would be great to have a conversation with you guys and get some live interaction. So I'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, YouTube may be suggesting that you watch this video right here because it might be relevant to this one and you might get some value from it. So catch you later on.